behind this. Why do we want kids to do a lot of independent reading? So if you need to convince anyone in your school that this is what you should be doing, children who read for 67 minutes a day, even on a standardised test, will come out about the 98th percentile, but if they only read 9 minutes a day, they'll come out on the 50th. It's a big difference, isn't it? Now, let's think about the reality of that. 67 minutes a day. When could that possibly happen? One thing, you've certainly got to set aside some time in the day for independent reading, don't you? Got to have a chunk of time. How long?
Well, our lessons are 45 minutes.
Yeah, okay. And so what you're in a secondary school, yeah. So what I find with the secondary level of those kids would be, is the whole school broken up into 45 minutes, even in reception?
Yeah. They not necessarily change lessons in reception.
No.
Secondaries will, but
yes.
the receptions will have
right.
Morning until recess time.
Yep. Okay. Right. It's just I did find a primary school who did that as well, and I thought, wow, that'd be tough to do. But anyway, what I find with the secondary schools I work in, they might do things like they say, over the week, if we've got 6 English classes, one of them will be entirely for independent reading. Or some others do the first 10 minutes of every session, the kids will read. So it varies on sort of what fits in with how they're going. But they're all trying to find enough time for the kids to read. Now, when it happens 10 minutes at a time, those kids are very frustrated because it's not, you're just getting into your reading and you've got to stop. Right? But it's amazing. They get to do it every day, so it tends to build up a reading habit. And we know from other research that whatever amount of time kids read at school, they're likely to spend that amount of time reading at home. So at least if they read for 10 minutes, they're likely to read for 10 minutes at home. But if they can read for 40, they're likely to read for 40 minutes at home. So you've sort of got to work out, how can we get things going and what will fit in. Often it's the timetable that gets in the way in a secondary school. But in primary, we don't have that as a problem. People have got their hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I've got reception ones and we managed to do 20 minutes a day easily.
Good on
we
you.
We just started really slow and built up their stamina. And
yep.
And because we follow it with bookmaking, if they don't want to finish, they don't have to. They can finish off their book and then just go when they're ready to carry on.
That's wonderful.
And they easily do 20
yep.
and do longer.
Good on you. That is just so true. And yet it's amazing, some people think that those little kids can only read for 5 minutes, but they actually like to stay with it, don't they?
They've got their own box of books and there's like half a dozen that they've chosen.
Yep.
And they swap them when they want to.
Right,
So
that's wonderful, wonderful. So can I just ask this question, because I don't want to spend too much time on something you're already doing. Hands up those of you who do have this slab of time every day for independent reading and you've got classroom libraries well set up like this. Okay, half the room, that's great. So you people all know what I'm talking about, don't you? About how important, how well it works. So what would you think, for example, you've given up a Saturday morning. What would you like to know more about?
Probably how to engage students when we're doing the conferring side of things.
Okay, so how to keep them involved in their reading when you're perhaps meeting with someone else. Okay, what about you?
I'm thinking I'm with EALD.
Yes.
I'm in a school that has the set 10 minutes. And I know that they're frustrated. Like I know I'm sort of reading to them following that.
Yeah.
Finding that set time. Like they want to first of all just chat with one another,
yeah.
which is good.
Yes.
But this is sort of a standard that's in, so I'm trying to think of
You've got
like
how you can get that changed.
Yeah, they love, like yesterday I read, what was it? I think I spoke to you before, I can't think of the name of it. But they loved hearing, you know, different sounds and different books. And
Yes.
so they're having to read just with their readers, their set readers. I can see they're getting it.
Oh,
Because that's what they're reading in that time.
oh, okay.
So I'm
Yeah.
just,
Do you know, it's interesting. As soon as you have to call a book a reader,
yeah.
you don't want it. All right? I mean, books are books, people are readers. So I never use the term readers, and it would have no place for me in my classroom anywhere, because if it's so bad, I've got to call it a reader. I don't want it. Yeah.
They want the other.
So when we're talking about kids independently reading, we're talking about real stuff, all right? Not levelled. What's wrong with the levelling idea? Yes, of course it does. I can't level a book that you're going to read, because I don't know whether, if this is about elephants, I don't even know if you know what an elephant is. And if you don't, this book is going to be very difficult for you to read. But if you know a lot about elephants, it's going to be very easy for you to read. And there's no way that anyone outside your classroom knows anything about your kids enough to be able to say, this book will be relatively easy for you. It will be something that you can read pretty well with perhaps just a little bit to work out, or this book is very easy for you, or this book is really challenging for you. It is impossible for someone else to put a level on a book. Right? When Reading Recovery first developed in New Zealand with Mari Clay all those years ago, she had hundreds of teachers go through those books that beginning readers would read, and they would really discuss quite thoroughly what was there about the features of the book that made this one a little bit more difficult than that one. And at about those very beginning 2 or 3 levels, there is actually a difference. You know, from the same words on every page to even the last page changes, there's a difference. And you know who's ready for what. But whoever's setting levels in your school, they need to get, you know, really find out about what that means, because and it's not how you choose to read. Do you ever say, oh, I'm going to read a book now, I think I'll go for a level 15?
I'm glad that I can then, like the books that I'm bringing in, and I'm seeing excitement, I'm just going to keep doing it.
Oh, my word, you do. Go to every, you know, yard sale or whatever.
Yeah, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom.
Oh, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, isn't that wonderful?
And I went after and she said, can I read that? And I'm thinking, you meant to be reading it. No, go ahead, read it.
Oh, yes. Do you know, if you teach reception or year 1, I've actually got a list of books that we've been making that every classroom at that level should have. It would never be something called a reader. But, you know, and it's not stupid, you know, but the books that kids love over and over again, tell me who the authors are of those books for that age group. Pamela Allen, Mem Fox, Pat Hutchins, John Birmingham, Alan Alberg, right? Now, even lots of parents will ask me, that have babies, what books should we have to read to our kids? There are books that kids want over and over and over again, aren't they? They're the ones that we should be making sure, because I'm working in classrooms where the kids have never seen those books before in particular. So I want those teachers to make sure those kids don't miss out, that those books are read over and over again. And we mean over and over again, don't we? Just like at home, the child wants it 100 times. That's how they learn to read.
So is there research that we can, that I can draw on to take back to my teachers who, you know, insist on children borrowing 5 readers every time they come to the library at their particular level, and I've got a teacher at the moment that wants to spend $3,000 on new take-home readers, and have you
Yep,
got something that I
absolutely.
can give and say,
Yep.
look at this?
Yes, definitely. Right, so if you give me your name and email address, okay, and I'll send you research stuff about that. Oh, okay, I'll make it available. And I'm thinking about, Steve Crashen's done oodles of research on just that very thing. But, you know, yeah, I know. And we do need to change those things, because they make a big difference. They really do. We're not just talking about, oh, let them read, and it can be anything. It can't. Yep.
So I guess what I would like to know, in our current context, we have a lot of children with English as an additional language.
Yes.
And a lot of parents that English is not a very well-spoken language for them. How do we then encourage these strategies and this love of reading when we have parents coming up to us saying, I don't know how to read myself, the books that they're bringing home are too hard for me? How do we support the parents where really they're trying to learn just as the children?
I've worked with loads of those families and kids. And when I'm talking about, let's think about a book like Who Sank the Boat by Pamela Allen, and how much even 5-year-olds love that book, 100 times, and actually can read it. Right? Now, we know reading begins with memorising in that sort of situation, doesn't it? But those kids, if I read that often enough in class that they say, I'm a reader, can actually go home and read it to their parents. And I talk with those parents about how that will actually help their reading in English, and they want that because they'll hear the language of those books, and that's how they're, you know, spoken language and written language are different, aren't they? So if they want their English to improve, as in vocabulary, grammar, all those things that they think about, the more that their children can read to them, those sorts of rich books, the more theirs will improve. And look, I even had one mum saying, I'm too frightened to read aloud to my children because my accent is different and I want them to only hear a good English accent. So I said, look, tell stories from your own culture. That's really important. On free on YouTube are so many children's picture books that they could both listen to together and read along with. Every Dr. Seuss book is free on YouTube, for example. But there are lots of them, aren't there? Storytime, wonderful. There's a librarian from a school in Warrigal, I think it is, in Victoria, and she reads a picture book every week and it's on YouTube. So I tell them about that. I also give them knowledge. And I've worked too with families that don't have access to the internet, right? So I can't just say it's free online. So I think it's very important in schools like that we get audio material that for all age groups the kids can read along with and take home. So I've had little book bags where we've actually had, you know, the hardware that goes with it. It used to be easier when it was on tapes and discs and whatever. But they often have iPhones, even if they don't have a laptop or an iPad. So even on those, they can go to that sort of material. I tell them where they can get all the nursery rhymes. You know, so I'll just make sure that one of the handouts I've got, actually it's that list of books that I say these are the ones you all should have. If you make a note that I include that, because at the end of it, I've got all these places where you can get free resources that the parents and kids could actually use, because they don't know that.
No.
And you know, and who does know it? Now, I've got 11 godchildren, all got kids, all well educated, professional people. They don't know what they should be reading to their kids. No, that's not their area of expertise. So we need to share this information with parents all the time, and especially what's free. Okay? Yes, Sharon.
And the libraries, the public libraries.
Oh, the public libraries, yes.
There's an app that they have, as long as you've got a library card
Yep.
and a number. Libby has got hundreds of
Thousands.
thousands,
Yes.
of ebooks.
Exactly.
Ebooks and audiobooks.
Yep. And it must be the same here. I belong to the state library in Victoria as well as my public library. Wow, what do I have access to? It's incredible. And you know, the programs they have all the time for families and kids too is amazing. You know, and you're lucky, you're in a smaller city. There are a lot of advantages that you have. But, you know, the public libraries are a fabulous resource for that. And, you know, I find that those people are too frightened to go to them. So it's really important we take our kids, get the cards, and make sure that the kids know enough about how to take their mum or their dad or whoever to the library, and that they'll know how to go about it. The more we educate our kids to help their parents in that situation, the better. Sorry, yeah.
Diane, also, if you've got the app Seesaw or something that you might want to film a video of the child reading their reader or...
Their what? Reading their book? Yeah.
And then you can send that out so that their families can have that and refer to that so that they know how to point the books, the words that are in the book, as well as if you're using a mentor text or a shared text.
I've also got on my iPad Storymaker for making your own books. And how easy is it in comparison with, you know, when I began teaching, we would have to write, go to the Gestetner machine and run it off, take photos, get them developed, you know. And now I take a photo with my iPad and put it into the Storymaker program, write the text to go with it. You know, Sharon is making cakes today, and the next day Sharon is playing in the playground and whatever. And in a few days I can print that out and you've got a book all about you, and you know what it says because those words were yours. How easy to make books about their own kids today.
I have one student in particular who during independent reading will actually rarely pick up a book and open it. Is that, do you think, are they not having the right kind of books? How do you encourage them to actually read?
Yeah. You know, I'll skip forward to, I'm going backwards, sorry. Something that makes a big difference. I'll go back to some of those in a minute. Students' personal reading boxes. What have they got in them? And you really have to do mini lessons on how to choose books that are just right for you as a child, right? Especially struggling readers will be worried about not reading the same as their mate next door to them or whatever. And so I talk about what smart readers do. Smart readers find something that they will want to read and enjoy and can read. Because if we go back to that research about independent reading, what is independent reading? You know, they need to read for so many minutes a day, independent reading. What's independent reading?
They're constructing meaning from the text.
They can, yes, so meaning is very important. They can work out what it's about. What about accuracy? What's the level of accuracy, do you think, for it to be something that you would understand? Just think common sense for a minute. If you were reading something and you were starting to notice every fifth word you didn't know, do you think that would affect your understanding? Okay. Well, then that would be, perhaps you had 80% accuracy, but you've still well and truly lost the meaning. So what do we need to get up to in that sort of percentage figure in order to make sure we really will still keep understanding what we're reading? What do you think it would be? 90% would still mean 1 in every 10 words, I don't know. That might work if I know a lot about the context. But if it was a new type of content to me, that would be pretty hard, wouldn't it? 1 in every 10 words, I don't know what it means.
Is that 97%?
Well, it's 95% plus, yeah, is what the researchers will talk about as being required. So there are a lot of things we need to do to help kids talk about what some people refer to as just right books. What's just right for me? How will I know this book's just right for me? This is talked about with this class. This was a grade 3-4. What's the 5-finger rule? Have you heard of that? Yeah. It's every time you come to a word you don't know, put a thumb or your finger down. I actually don't find that works for me personally. I've tried it out in myself. Sometimes if I'm reading something that's new content to me, I might come across 5 words on the first page that I don't know, but if I read on, I know I'm now learning more, and I actually can even figure out what those words might have been. So we have to be wary about rules, right? What you really want the kids to be doing is one of the most important comprehension strategies, monitoring. Monitoring your own reading. Am I losing sense? Right? If so, I'm not even going to enjoy it. So the discussion around that is absolutely essential. I'm sure that we've all done similar things. Sally, I can remember, what was this, the school that you did lots of great work at? So Monmouth, yeah. I mean, I still remember the filming we started doing back in that school, really teaching the kids how to choose books that were just right for them. It was so important. Many lessons on that, weren't there? Lots, yeah. And even then, one of the things that, conferring, the kids are all reading, you're all reading, and I'm going to have, conferences with some of you. I like to do a lot of them very quickly, first up. And one of the things I want to check on very quickly is, what do you have in your reading box? All right? So I really want to check in that with as many children as possible at the start of that reading time, do they actually have stuff they can read and are interested in reading? And if not, then there's feedback for me as a teacher. There might be a group I need to work with, because that's how you form groups. You can't form groups ever until you actually know who needs to be in the group. There's 5 or 6 kids actually still not really good at choosing what's there. Group work, all right? I need to actually help you with that task to choose what you're interested in, what's just right for you, and to give you variety, fiction and non-fiction. Poetry, jokes, whatever, but a variety there. Something you want to read. Something that's easy, because, we just do that sort of beach type reading, if you like to call it. Perhaps something that is a struggle, but you're really interested in it, but you could have someone read that to you, or if it was non-fiction and had lots of pictures, or a fiction with a lot of pictures, you could work it out. But if you had all of that kind of reading, your reading won't improve. Does that make sense? So it's that whole discussion around smart readers find what they're interested in and can read. Okay? The word good reader gets in the way. So looking at the cover, reading the blurb, that's all about, will I want to read this? Thinking about other books you like, will this one be similar? Try some new topics sometimes, so that you broaden it. So the kids came up with all these ideas. And, it's okay to have too hard, too easy, and just right. And in fact, what do you think about this? I go into a grade 1 classroom and a child comes up to me and he says, Mrs. Snowball, if you look in my reading box today, you're going to see lots of easy reading for me because I'm working on my fluency. And in order to get more fluent, it needs to be material, books I can read easily so I can just focus on the expression and the phrasing.
I'd be very impressed.
Okay? Exactly those words. I was thinking, God, where was my camera, to record that? I was still thinking about that this morning in bed, actually. I wish I'd recorded that, right? I should have gone to do it again. But now, there's lots of things going on in that classroom in order for that child to be able to talk about his reading that way. But he can, because that's how they discuss their reading all the time. But why do they have what they've got in their book bag may be very dependent upon what their goal is at the time. I'm trying to work on getting better at visualising, so I need to have in my book box a lot of stuff that's very descriptive that will help me get strong pictures when I read. If it's material that I don't know very much about, I can't get good pictures. Like the girl who was trying to read a book about Vikings. Didn't know, couldn't understand it at all. She had no idea what a Viking was. Didn't know what they did, when they lived, none of the rape and pillage stuff, right? not a good book for her to improve her visualising, because she can't even get a picture in her head of what a Viking is. So always thinking about the purposes, what they're working on. But for a start, with that boy, I just want to help him find something he can read that he will love. Right? And, you know, if I need to take him personally and help him to do that for the first few times, fine. And then I'll call on him to share with the class how smart he is because he's found something he likes and can read. Does that seem doable? Okay. Always feel like it's doable and it's worth doing, that you know, this is worth putting the effort into. Yep, hand up over there. Yep.
Are you suggesting that the boxes that we provide should be the focus for improving the reading, where their pleasure reading is off the shelf in their little library?
No, what's in their book box, a reading should always all be for pleasure.
Some of my readers in year one.
You mean the children or the books?
The kids
Yeah.
in my class who we've got level readers and they're 22 out of the class up, they're pulling out texts that are non-fiction, that are about the world around them, have stunning photography, and they're doing this because they're like, oh, let's talk about this. Trace, where do you think this is?
Yep.
Oh, you know, Victoria Falls.
Yep.
One kid's just gone spastic on crystals, like,
Yep. Wonderful.
or
Of course, you want to encourage that to the ultimate, don't you?
because they can't read
But if they only have that,
no.
right, so they need to know for themselves, monitoring what's the variety of stuff they've got in their personal book box, so that they've got some material, like these children are saying, might be too hard for me to read personally, and I might be able to read later in the year, or, you know, I need a challenge, I'm interested in it, I can't figure it all out, but particularly with non-fiction, you know, that it doesn't matter if they can't read all the words, they figure out a lot of things, don't they? As well as things that are easy, but they, you know, they love it, or they're practicing their fluency. And then the just right is, I understand it, I can get most of the words, I know what they are, I know what they mean, there's a little bit of work for me to do. And it's those books that keep pushing them a bit. If they only read the really challenging all the time, then that's hard. But I wouldn't say you're never allowed to have it.
Advanced vocabulary.
Yep.
Able to use descriptors because they
Because they've read.
they've understood the read.
Of course.
Contextually,
Of course. The effect on their writing is incredible when they're reading material varied, that they can read, and stuff that will stretch them, new vocabulary, new ways of writing, phrasing that different authors use. What we read aloud to them all has a great impact on their writing, doesn't it? Okay. So we're not talking about any fixed, you know, number. In fact, even with older kids, I say to them, you know what, I don't just have this book on the go. I actually also always know what I'm going to read next because I'm a reader. Okay? So it's okay to have more than one. Something that you're reading now, something you know you're going to read next. So if I finish this, I've got something to go on with. But also I might have a magazine, a newspaper, something that's non-fiction. That if we don't build children's world knowledge, then they will struggle to read a lot of things and write a lot of things, right? So that I actually have a goal of thinking about when I read aloud, what am I reading that's going to build their world knowledge? Are we going to have times when we look at film clips like David Attenborough, you know, all that wonderful stuff that's on TV that we can download free? It's a wet day today, you know, let's all watch this at lunchtime. They love it. I'm building their world knowledge. And do you know, I'm discovering as a teacher that kids' world knowledge is less now than it used to be. Aren't you? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, why do you think this is happening? What are they spending a lot of time on at home? What is it? iPad screens, doing what? Games. Unfortunately, I don't know how we're going to help parents to learn about this, But, you know, it's just frightening. You go out to a restaurant and you see kids being minded by an iPad or an iPhone from the time they're very little kids, not even taking part in a conversation, certainly not looking at anything that's going to increase their knowledge about anything other than how to play that game. And that, you know, what are the figures on that? It's hours per week kids are spending on this, right? So how do we counteract this? Because, you know, if they don't have enough knowledge to bring to understand what they're reading, then comprehension's just not going to be there. It's like Sarah. I'm talking about Sarah as a 14-year-old not knowing what a Viking was, and therefore, and you know what the worst thing was? She went on reading thinking that was all right, even though she had no idea what it was about. Monitoring, am I making sense? Do I understand this? I think is absolutely key.